The music industry needs to work with... I'm glad you keep calling us powerful, by the way. I feel like my power is raging. Yeah.
Hello and welcome to Unseen Unheard, the podcast where we discuss the Black disabled experience in the UK's music industry. My name's Joy Addo and I'll be your host. I am joined by two very special, powerful and inspiring women. We have Charisse Beaumont, co-founder of Black Lives in Music.
Hi.
And founder of Attitude is Everything, Suzanne Bull. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I feel like I'm around greatness right now. You two are very powerful ladies. How are you both feeling today?
Nervous.
Yeah,
can we say that? Can we?
Yeah.
We need to shake it off a little bit. But
Shake it
nervous.
off. Don't be nervous.
All of these power words as well as kicking my imposter syndrome in as well. So, but you know.
Listen, I feel like one thing that I always do at the start of each episode is ask everybody how they're feeling. And you don't just have to say, I'm fine, if you're not fine. I actually care. So tell me, Charisse, will start with you. Tell me, how are you feeling today?
No.
Other than nervous.
Other than nervous, I can't wait to do this. So I've been waiting a long time to just do this podcast with you, to present this report, obviously, of what we're talking about today. And it's high time. This is us dipping our toes in. Believe me, there's a lot more coming. Yeah. So yeah, ready to get started.
Good. Suzanne, how are you?
I'm fine. I'm excited actually because I read the full report last night, and it's high time that things were done. And we're so ready for this, aren't we?
Yeah,
we really are. We've been talking about it for a while.
Yeah, we have.
And it is a long time coming. I'm nervous because normally when I'm doing podcasts, I'm just behind like my computer doing it, looking into a Zoom thing, you know, at home. And actually being in the studio is
different.
A little bit different. Yeah, a little bit different.
Tell me about it. It's very different.
Yeah.
It's very different.
But we're with greatness.
Yeah, we are.
You're an expert. So
yeah,
I'm trying to be. We'll speak it into existence. I'm an expert. Yep, I know 100% what I'm doing. Before we get started and talk about the report and everything like that, for people who may have just stumbled across this podcast, who may not know who I am, may not know who you guys are, can you just tell us a little bit about Attitude is Everything and Black Lives in Music? So Charisse, let's start with you. Black Lives in Music, why did it start? When did it start? What are you guys all about for people listening?
Sure. So today is the 24th of May, and it's not lost upon me that tomorrow will be 3 years since George Floyd was murdered. We are Black Lives in Music are a organisation that rose up around the time George Floyd was murdered, the resurgence of the civil rights movement. And we are here, we exist to address the disparities that are there in the music industry. So we are a research and advocacy organisation. We use research primarily to find out what exactly is happening in the landscape, and then we use advocacy, working with organisations to make those changes. We published a report in 2021, October 2021, called Being Black in the UK Music Industry. It's been downloaded 6,000 times to date, and that report really shared the experience that black workers, black music professionals, black music creators are facing in the music industry, looking at their pay, looking at mental health, looking at barriers to progression and intersectionality, which we're touching on today. Yeah. So yeah, it's really great to be a part of this next segment of that piece of work.
Lovely. And Suzanne, obviously I know who you are because you're my big boss, but tell the people listening about Attitude is Everything. You founded it 20 years ago, 22 years ago now?
I'm 23 now,
Oh gosh, 23 years ago. Tell us about Attitude, how it started, why it started, and what we do as an organisation.
So I'm a disabled person. I've always been a disabled person. I haven't always been a wheelchair user. that happened gradually, like in my 20s. And I absolutely love live music. I wanted to be a music journalist. And I've played in loads of bands as well, and I've worked on various events. And I had like what you might call like a series of accidents and happenings and incidents where I was trying to access seeing my favourite bands, and there wasn't any access at festivals and venues. And after one accident, I was like, well, if I get out of this alive, because I was being crushed, I'm sure there's a better way to make live music and events and everything accessible to disabled people. So I started writing a series of articles about it, and an Arts Council officer called Grey Wall picked up the articles, and he got my phone number from somebody and rang me up and left a message in the days of the answer phone at home. And he said, "Hi, you don't know me. My name's Grey Wall, but I've read your articles, and I'm wondering if you would like to do a little pilot programme on looking at how we might improve access for disabled people to," it was just live music then, now we've expanded out to music and live events. Mm-hmm. So we sat down as a steering group, Musicians Union, an organisation called Gig Right UK, who turned into British Underground, and the Arts Council, and we sat down and we created a pilot programme. And it was basically a very basic charter where there were 10 ways in which people could improve their access, and then a way of disabled audiences checking on that access. So that was like mystery shopping, like collecting feedback, that kind of stuff. And on the 19th of May 2000, I started in the office, just me and my support worker. And it was meant to be, as I say, a 1-year pilot programme. We launched it in September 2000 at Dingwalls, and we ramped out all of Dingwalls and put on sign language interpreters as well. And I remember the licensing officer at Camden, he used to be a fire officer as well, and he was telling us all these horrendous things about, you know, how we shouldn't mess about with emergency access and egress, and we had to persuade him that what we were going to do to Dingwalls to ramp it out needed to be done, because we couldn't just use a venue that was accessible already. Dingwalls had some basic access. You could get in the entrance, you could get in the toilet, but you know, you could get sort of near the stage, but we wanted everybody to be at the front, so we ramped it all out. I mean, his concession was that we had to halve its capacity, so it was a 500 capacity venue, and we halved it to 250 for him. And when he came, he was still kind of like, oh my goodness, you're doing this, but he could see how much it could work and what we could do and how we could do it, because as I say, it's pointless holding it in a venue that's accessible already. We had to show that those adjustments could be done. And then what happened was that the charter was so very successful that we just kept getting awarded project funding like year on year, and the team like grew around me, and then other corporate partners came on board, such as Glastonbury, Festival Republic as well. And then by sort of 2008, we'd already done a feasibility study run by an organisation called The Hub, who recommended that we become what was then a regularly funded organisation by Arts Council England. And lo and behold, 1st of April 2008, that's what we became, and we're still here forevermore with a really great and expert team around us, doing projects not only just that are audience facing, but also artists as well, and also for disabled professionals, and we have the volunteer stewarding programme as well. And that's why I always wanted it to be like that 360 look. And also I knew in my mind, because I loved music so much, and I'm disabled, so it directly affects me, and I knew there were loads of people in my position who wanted to work in music, who were really good musicians, who were great fans and supportive fans, and I knew that there was a gap there that needed to be filled. So in my mind, it was never a pilot programme. What I thought was in about 20 years, we wouldn't be needed anymore. But what's happened is, and I think some of that rollback is due to COVID.
Yep.
And some of the rollbacks and changes that have happened. We are still here 23 years later. So the basic thing of what we do is we connect disabled people with the music and live event industries, and we improve access together. That's it.
Yeah, no. And the thing is, both organisations do so much, and we will come back to that. But I wanted to speak a bit about, so the reason we're here, the reason we have this podcast is because Attitude Is Everything and Black Lives in Music are now collaborating on this project. But Charisse, can you take us back to the initial report that Black Lives in Music did? Tell us a bit about that report, and then why this report, Unseen Unheard, has come about.
Yeah, so I was asked to do a case study around the time of what the music industry should do surrounding Blackout Tuesday. How can we affect change for Black people? So I was asked to do a case study, and in order to do a case study, you need some evidence, you need some data. And then we quickly realised there was zero data out there on Black people in general. Whether they were students or whether they were musicians, there was no data at all. So that was the first thing we had to do. We had to gather the data. Yeah. Created a data set, had lots of people in the industry involved in it. Black Lives in Music do get good credit for doing the data, but when I think back at that early stage trying to gather that information, a lot of people helped. So we put out a survey, and we got 2,000 participants, and we published that report. And as I said earlier on, it showed the stark difference, the stark disparity of what Black people face. And as Black people, we already knew it. Yeah. But to see it on paper made the difference. We had meetings after we published the report. We had meetings with 90 organisations, the leaders of 90 organisations across the music industry, the Guns, the Dragons, the major record label, BPI, Spotify, all the DSPs, you name it, they were there. Yeah. And we were able to present those findings and say, look, what are you going to do about this? Now's the time for change. Yeah. We have to close this gap. We have to close the pay disparity gap. We have to deal with racial discrimination because it's affecting mental health. And so with that, we had a consensus out of those meetings, an idea to bring out an anti-racism code of conduct. That anti-racism code of conduct is done. We completed it this week, last week, the 18th, Friday the 18th. It was done. And we'll be rolling that out in September, October times, with some mechanisms as well. So really important to say that research data can lead to big things, can lead to change. So this is where that data set led us. Before we published the report, I was going through the spreadsheets. I'm a geek. So we were going through the spreadsheets. And I'm looking at the landscape, and I'm looking at various demographics, whether it's region, whether it's ethnicity, gender, and I'm looking, and I get to disabled, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, this is not right. This is really bad. And one of the stats that stuck out to me was we asked a question in the report, which was, if you've faced discrimination, what is it? On what basis have you faced discrimination? So let me clear that up. On what basis have you faced discrimination? Yeah. And this question was asked to Black disabled music creators. 65% said they faced discrimination because of their race, 21% because of their class, 23% because of their age, 34% because of their gender, and 7% because of their disability. And I was like, okay, what does that mean? So I emailed Attitude Is Everything. Please explain to me, what does that mean? What can we do to help Black disabled people who are constantly going through discrimination? They're already discriminated against because they have a disability. But then they're discriminated against even more
because of their race.
Because of their race.
Yep. And one thing that kind of stood out, especially for me in the report, was that actually the intersectionality of people is like, sometimes people don't actually know why they're being discriminated against. Like, is it because of my race? Is it because of my disability? Is it because of my gender? Like, people, sometimes the lines can be blurred. And I think that's something that really, like, shone out for me in the report, was actually hearing people's lived experiences.
Can I just rebuttal that? And it maybe even, if we don't mind, if we get into the discord of education, but for me, when I saw that stat, what's the first thing you see sometimes? It's your race. Then you'll see your gender. And then sometimes people might have some hidden disabilities.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah.
And those are the things that I believe might need addressing. Discrimination is a way of making people feel that they're not included. I think one of the other things that made me want to do the report, and like you, it's like a string of events just happened. I spoke with an artist, a classical music student, and, you know, she's black, neurodivergent, she's a woman, and she's queer. And she said she faces barriers because of all four.
Yeah.
You know, and that is something, we need to actually look at discrimination and actually address these barriers that people face.
Yeah.
That intersectionality.
Yeah, it's very important. Suzanne, I wanted to ask you, so obviously when Charisse reached out to Attitude Is Everything and, you know, spoke about their findings, their data, and obviously there have been conversations and we've got round to doing this report, but I just want to know from you, what made this working relationship feel right? Because if we're honest, let's be honest, sometimes speaking about things that are difficult, so racism, discrimination in any kind of way, is actually a touchy subject, and actually a lot of people don't want to, they don't want to do it, they don't want to talk about it, they just want to brush everything under the carpet. So I think it really says something about Attitude as an organisation, the fact that you guys wanted to collaborate on this, bring this report to fruition. But what made that feel like the right thing to do for you?
Well, it wasn't that it was right, it was necessary. And as soon as you read the report, and that's what stood out to me, it was the figures were really low. You know, there was 7% of creators, and then I think it's 5% of artists. I think it's something like that. And they were so low, those figures. That's what really stood out to me. Plus, I think it's a natural collaboration, because if you don't mind me saying so, I think Charisse and I, as our other members of our team, aren't frightened of saying stuff.
Yeah.
And being out there and putting it on the table and going, no, this is how it is.
Yeah.
This is the evidence. But even without the evidence, we can tell you what it is, and we're not afraid of it. It's not that we want to make people feel uncomfortable, but there are things that need to be said. And me, I'm a very visibly disabled person, so people make assumptions about me as soon as they see me. Plus I'm a woman as well, so they have certain things in their head. So all I have really is my voice to say, no, it's this, and this is what the experience is, and this is what the evidence is, and this is what our community of people say. But I also wanted to collaborate because I felt sometimes we had a certain data set. Attitude Is Everything, but I don't think it was a diverse data set in other ways. And also the numbers of people that were filling in our surveys, and we turned them into the state of access reports that look at how access is over a 2-year period. We were previously doing those before COVID. We weren't getting enough numbers as a sample, but we weren't getting enough diversity either. And that's why it was like a natural partnership. And our relationship manager at the time, Arts Council, had said to me, do you know of Black Lives in Music? Do you know that the work they do? And I said, well, I've seen like Charisse and Roger speak sometimes, whether it was at the time it was online. I've seen all of the Black Lives Matter movement. I saw that happening, unfolding in front of me online at home, because at the time I was in the clinically extremely vulnerable group, well I still am, and receiving cancer treatment, so I couldn't really do anything but watch it unfold online. I also knew that like online what was also unfolding, because quite a lot of disabled people were at home. There was a hashtag unfolding called "We Shall Not Be Removed," because disabled people could see that they were suddenly being removed from society because we were all told to stay at home.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that Black Lives Matter was visible and out on the streets, but actually people didn't necessarily see in the public that disabled people were also visible, but online in another way, using the ways that they could. And I just thought this is a natural collaboration. We will get more diverse disabled people coming to us for help and helping support them through the barriers that they have because of ableism. And then also our work will also influence Black Lives in music and how they approach and how they remove barriers. And it's the two powerful organisations together, because I think it's Esther that says in the report that people are seen in single blocks of identity. And I've always thought that, and I've always said this it just isn't happening, it isn't right. It's like genres of music, isn't it? You're either this genre or that genre. So I think it's quite easy for the music industry and in society at large to put people in blocks. And it's a bit like our co-chair Jackie will always say, which hat do I wear today? Is it the gender hat? Or is it the race hat? Or is it the disability hat? You can't ever do them all together. But actually your perspective as a person is informed by all of the things that you have, all the perspectives that you have. So my kind of perspective is informed by my disability, my gender, but also my background, because I'm working class as well. So it those perspectives are all there in the mix. But also people are never ever treated as individuals either, and what one disabled person experiences is much different to another, and even if you've got the same impairment, it's a very different experience. And this is the thing, and this is what our organisations can do. We can highlight the problem, give some solutions, commit to working together, and if we commit to working together, then it will show the industry that there's two powerful organisations combined. They need to join and work with us too. And I think our role is to bring through those voices to say, this is my experience and this is what I've had, whether it's a good one or a bad one, a positive or a negative. We should show all of it.
And I guess it's kind of like paving the way in a sense, you know, to the industry to say, look, we're working together, you guys need to come on board and work with us as well. Charisse, for you, from the report, what were some of the things that stood out most for you?
I think just hearing the voices. I think Michael's contribution kind of got to me. There's a case study where Michael is speaking about, you know, he's deaf and he works in radio broadcast, and sometimes people don't understand he's deaf, so he will speak a bit louder, and then he has the perception that he's an aggressive black man, rather than the fact that, you know, well, actually, you know, he can't hear. And perception is really important, you know. I think also just I'm really taken back by what Suzanne said, if I'd be completely real, and I'll go a little bit off course. Inclusion is really important to what we do at Black Lives in Music. Personally, I don't like the word diversity. I don't really get it. I understand there's a diverse array of people, but for me, inclusion is a really important word, because it means that everybody should belong. You know, if we look at the myriad of those who might identify as disabled or neurodivergent or black, or what race, or you're mixed, or your class, you lived in Yorkshire, but you might live in Bryant. It's just got a different upbringing. Every single human being on the planet. But we put them in these little blocks, as you said, and as Esther said in the report. And I think it's important that we start to see people for who they are and include everyone. So for me, what stuck out from the report is those voices. the voices of those who, no matter what their situation was, and they've managed to fulfill their ambition. They've had it as disabled people, they've had it really hard, whether it was through education or whether they were born or it's happened to them en route, had to go through different barriers because society hasn't catered for them, or made a way for them, or the barriers that we're talking, those barriers still remain. And I feel like if we are truly trying to be an inclusive music industry, we'll be inclusive for everyone.
Yeah.
And that means making provisions, making changes for people.
Yeah.
You know, I know we're talking about the report, but the report is, like I said, a chain of events for me. And I remember, you know, being interviewed a few months back by a guy called Kevin at the BBC. I walk in and Kevin's blind.
Yeah,
and
good friend of mine, Kevin.
Yeah, Kevin's the guy. And, you know, he produced that programme. He sourced the talent. He interviewed me. He thought of the questions. He produced that programme.
Yeah.
There was no disability to that, if we would. I haven't got the correct term. Yeah. But there was nothing that stopped him from being able to do that.
Yeah.
So I believe that we need to look at an industry, at people for who they are and what they're able to do. Where their help is needed, we cater for that. We create programs. Yeah. We create pathways for all people to go through. And that's my stance. When I read that report, I'm used to seeing the stats. You know, I've got a million stats in my head. Yeah. You know, the fact that only 9% of those who identify as disabled are satisfied with the way the music industry treat black people. That means, and then 81% are dissatisfied. 81% are not happy with the way the music industry treats black disabled people. What are we going to do about that? Those 81%, that 81%. Yeah. What changes are we going to make? And that is why, again, the report, we want to encourage people to read it, to get to understand the voices, but it also has to be said that this report is just the beginning.
Yeah, very much the beginning.
It's the beginning. We need more data to get to understand the black experience in the music industry, being black and disabled. But at the same time, we also need to act.
Yep.
And the music industry needs to work with. I'm glad you keep calling us powerful, by the way. I feel like my power's raging. Yeah, but powerful organisations such as Attitude is Everything, and Black Lives in Music, because we understand that voice. And working with us can help you as an organisation get to where you need to become more inclusive.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen by yourself.
And it's about not being afraid, isn't it, to kind of have that relationship with another organisation who may know more about one thing than you do. Yeah. They can learn from you, you can learn from them. That's what it's all about. Do you know what I mean? And
we're learning from each other.
100%.
You know, there's knowledge sharing that we're doing. So the black experience, people that are deaf and disabled, we're learning about that. We've done workshops, internal workshops, so we are ready to do that. And so if we're learning from one another, you guys can learn from us. You know, on how to make those changes. Sorry, I feel like I was interrupting.
No, I was going to say that partnership working has always been like really, really important to Attitude is Everything. And I think that comes from my personal experience from like, I went through the whole of mainstream school since I was like 4 years old. And at the time it was an experiment to put disabled people into mainstream school to see how they'd cope. And there was never any question of providing any access or reasonable adjustments. You just got on with it. But I think I learned from very young and watched my parents do it as well about negotiating with other people, about getting round the issues, getting around the barriers. It was like a constant negotiation. But I knew we all had to negotiate with people sometimes that we didn't want to negotiate with, so I could get like an education and get things done. And I see the same as there's no point me or anyone creating a charter like we did, as it was the Charter of Best Practice then. Now it's like the Live Events Access Charter. There's no point us putting out this set of principles and set of things, ways for people to improve, if the music industry isn't going to act on it, if it isn't going to do anything with it. So when we did the research for Attitudes Everything, obviously we asked disabled audiences, we had a lot of data on that, like, what do you feel, why do you feel you're left out, what could be different? And then we said to the music industry, look, when we presented them with the data, like, why is it that you're not doing anything? And they're like, oh, thank God you've actually said something, because we actually want to adhere to what it was then the Disability Discrimination Act. But it's just like a set of things that we don't know how to practically implement. And if you could tell us what the practical solutions could be and we could work them out together, then we could make a difference. And there you have your principle of Attitudes Everything. So everything's worked out together and in partnership. And really, this sounds a bit rude, but it's the way it is. I've always encouraged the team at Attitude is Everything, and even I work like this myself, to work with people who aren't going to give you a hard time, right? So they're quite easy to work with, they're flexible, they listen to you, they do things properly and they implement things properly. Okay, there's mistakes and things made along the way, but that's what partnerships are all about. There's plenty of people out there that don't want to engage, that don't want to do things. But what happens is when something grows at like a movement and this progression made, those people will then want to come on board, because there's something about egos in the music and live events industry, and if they see their competitors and their partners, like, I know it's a very cynical thing to say,
it's real.
Like, they will then go, I want a piece of that and we need to be on board with that, and suddenly they're on board. So there is a competition sometimes in the charter venues, you know, and I'm glad we created that competition about who's going to get to gold, because some of the big commercial companies like, well, if that festival's at gold, we can be at gold, we can be higher than that, you know, and we can reach platinum. And that's, cynically, that's what you want it to be. But really and truthfully, it doesn't just come down to that, because it comes down to making sure everybody's included, but also you're missing out on talent.
Absolutely.
Now, I work a lot with the UK Diversity Task Force. I know Paul sits on it from Attitudes Everything, but I have a lot of dealings with it, and I talk a lot with Amo Talwar. And I know that Amo's quote, which I've used many times, is talent is everywhere, but opportunity is not. And these are the things that we're creating, that kind of opportunity, getting people ready. But also, I find that people feel much more comfortable if somebody who understands your experience is helping you and talking to you. They'll take it more. And I'll give you an example of this. Like, I was at Falmouth University last week with one of our trustees, a new trustee's come aboard, Adrian Bossy. And Adrian is a music manager from a long time ago. He used to manage Drugstore and Carter Unstoppable Sex Machine and all of that. And so I followed his bands for years. And he co-created a course with us, like a module on an access module for their events course. And what we were doing last week was looking at technology, augmented technology, and access, and the audience access. So they had Rowan James in from Beat Blocks, who does the vibrating dance floors that he's made. He's a disabled person. Then you had Def Rave. So you had Troy Lee and MC Geezer from Def Rave. Brilliant guys, deaf MCs, using the Wooja jackets. And my point is that we got some, they got some students in from Exeter Deaf Academy, and you know what it's like, they're teenagers, they come in, they're like, we're on a school visit, we have to do this. You can see them a little bit thinking, you know, we've all been there as teenagers, oh God, school visit, what we're doing now. And they sat there, then Troy and Lee are in front of them, and they're like, oh, it's two deaf guys. They're talking about, and they're signing as well, and they're talking about culture, which these kids want a part of, and they understand. They understand the deaf culture that they're talking about, how you're left out in society, what the boundaries can be, and suddenly they're all looking like this. They're not talking and signing amongst themselves, they're suddenly looking. And then Troy says, and we're going to teach you to DJ with the haptic jackets. And one of the guys went, "Paul," like this. He's like, I'm there. And I've never seen so many kids just immediately get up and go, yeah, I'm going to go on this. And they were meant to have, like, take 4 people at a time to try on the jackets and DJ just once for 10 minutes. Well, I think all of that group got about 4 goes each. And Troy and MC Geezer, they literally had to run for their train. And then afterwards, the students went on the haptic dance floor and they watched, like, the final assessments for the music course. And so suddenly they're there. For all of them, I think, it was the first time they'd ever been to a live music event. And suddenly they're included, they're feeling the beat, they're signing to their teachers, they're videoing they're videoing the other students who are videoing them because they're so excited. They're saying to the teachers, tell me what the lyrics are, sign the lyrics, and they're all signing them, and suddenly they're there. And that's what I mean about there's someone there who's in front of you that says, I know how hard it is, I've been there, let me help you. And that's what we're doing. That's what all the 3 of us sitting here are doing, really.
Yeah.
And that's our role. That's
Absolutely.
what we should do.
Absolutely. You know, I think that I've got a visual of that, and it just feels really amazing. And I'm really glad that it's taken an organisation such as Attitude and that deaf school to make the link to give these young people the opportunity. And then this is not to bring about buts, but it feels like it's too far, you know, it's an anomaly almost. You know, and that's how I feel like if we allow the music industry to just relax and not take the opportunity to work with us, not much will change. It won't impact the lives that course has impacted. And that's what we're talking about here. Real, genuine people, real humans who need the opportunities and access.
And they need to be heard.
And they need to be heard. And that access and opportunity doesn't currently exist. Let's be really real. If you're facing a barrier if you're black, but like I said, if you're black and disabled, that's a whole different ball game. And I'm just I'm hoping that when the music industry does grab a hold of this report, they will say, well, actually, there's stuff that we can do. You know, we can bring young people together to experience a live music concert. We can make that live music concert using the technology that we have accessible, you know, that they can take part, that we can also have programs that these young people can go on. When I think about Kevin, like I said, you know, why are we not seeing more people like Kevin behind the booth producing stuff, you know, in the music industry, working in different organisations? We've had a lovely set of we've had a lovely set of people on this podcast. We've got fantastic people who are doing their thing in the report, but these people are not holding back and saying how hard it was. So let's make it easier for them.
Yeah, that's what I want to do. Like, I want to be in a position where I've helped people do the things that I didn't have the opportunity to do. But I have had a lot of opportunities in my life. I have to be honest about that. I have. You know, I've worked very hard to create them, but I've also had things come my way. And I can't say why that is. It's just I've been in the right place at the right time, which is what half of this is as well. But I think what you want to be is you want any disabled person to go, I want to do that, I'm going to be that, I'm going to be an artist, I'm going to do this, I'm going to be behind the camera, I'm going to produce that radio programme, I'm going to be in the audience, I'm going to go anywhere I want to. I'm going to write whatever I want to in music journalism. That's the kind of thing that you want. But I think what it takes is for people to start infiltrating, if that's the right word, but it probably is the right word, to the industry. So you want people to start working there, and you want those people to go up into the senior positions. And they're not just, everyone's got to start somewhere. I know it's difficult to start, but you want people to be in the senior positions. But there are already people in senior positions, and you will know this as well, but they are afraid of saying that they're disabled or they've got an impairment or a health condition.
I mean,
they're really, really, really afraid of saying it. And this is why we need to help them and support them to do what they want to do
so
as well.
This is what makes it interesting, Suzanne. You're saying there are disabled people but they're not black. And this is one of the barriers that we face. And I know that's really, we're not talking about being divisive here. I want to make that clear. I'm just being honest of what we see, what is statistical in terms of UK music data. If we're talking about senior management, you know, I had a person come up to me and say, you know what, Charisse, you know what, I'm disabled, but no one can see it. So I understand what you're going through. What black people go through, you don't. And that is where an education piece needs to be done. Not to say like you need to be educated, but you know what? I'm sure there are people who are afraid to speak out for or make way for, but they're not black, and that's a barrier that we can't even get through. Where we're at in the music industry is at such a level that we just need to see change. I'm not gonna use this podcast as a rant. I've decided just now, but just now I've decided. But I will say, like, you know, that is the difference, Suzanne. In all honesty, we don't have that privilege of being in senior management level, and it's very few of us, if at all. Yeah. You know, but you're right though. Those who are there and those who are disabled do need to it is tricky, but this is where, if we're going to really see change, whether you're disabled in that position or able, you've got to see that a change has to happen, where we have to become more inclusive at the top. You have to be brave as a leader in the music industry to say, you know what, change is what we're looking for, change at the top. So you know what, we are going to bring more people through who come from various different backgrounds. As a leader in the music industry, that's your job. I won't name and shame on podcasts, but you know who you are if you're listening. Be brave. Yeah. Make those changes.
But then I don't think they're women either. I mean, there was a set of women that was recruited to the music industry, and then they wanted to move on and do other things, and it was almost like the music industry said, we've done women now, so what's the next thing we're going to do? Do you obviously see that as well, and that's the other thing. But I think the other answer is the entrepreneurship that exists in the music industry as well. So if you have like organisations like Attitude is Everything, you have organisations like Black Lives in Music that have just sprung up anyway, and they've used their entrepreneurship to do that and say, well, you're not doing it, so we're going to do it. And there are companies around, I can think of Come Play With Me as well, who are doing it anyway and just saying, well, look, we're holding a mirror up to you, music industry. We've got hardly any money, hardly any staff, hardly any resources, but here we are. What a surprise. We're diverse. You know, and I think that's really important. So that's the influence from the other ways to push by in the end, what happens is that people create their own way because they just get frustrated with all of the institutional stuff that happens. Which
no,
it does
100%.
Well.
You know, and that's one of the things why I really enjoy this partnership, because it is leading by example. Yeah. You know, like, you need to see it, but at the same time, the industry also need to understand that if you want to encourage people to be, those people need to be exist in those positions, if you would. You know, music creators need to have a platform. We're very intentional about doing this podcast because we want to lead by example, that we want to see more people do podcasts. We want to see more people become involved and be artists on your events and speaking at your events, and black disabled people being able just to share their experience, and not just in diversity panels, but actually as a musician, you know, or as an industry professional. And that's the desire that we have, and that's why we're working together to make that happen.
And that's interesting, because you've basically answered my last question, but I'm going to ask it anyway in case there's any more points that you want to say. But imagine this is your time, both of you. This is your time. Look directly at the camera and tell the music industry what you want them to do after reading this report, listening to this podcast. What do we want them to do? What are our recommendations?
I want them to recognise that you can't have single blocks of identity.
Yeah.
That just doesn't exist, really. It's a made-up thing. That the issue that's been uncovered in the Unseen Unheard report, the issues that are there, they are real and they are huge and they shouldn't exist. And they've got to be taken seriously, because if they're not taken seriously now, when are you going to take them seriously? Follow the examples of action that what Black Lives Music and Attitude is Everything are going to be doing together, and you come and you bring your resources to the table and you support us to do what we want to do, and then we'll support you to do what you want to do. Because if you don't know
Absolutely.
what to do and where to start, we are actually here as Attitudes Everything Black Lives in Music. We're here to help you. So that's what I hope the industry takes away from the report.
Amazing. Charisse, do you have any final
Final
words to the industry?
I think, to be honest, I would hope the industry read the report.
Yeah.
Understand that there are humans' voices behind those stats. You know, it was 149 people. The voices of 149 people is actually 249 people actually in our report, but that in our original data that identified as disabled. But for this report, we zoomed in on 149 voices.
Mm-hmm.
I would like the industry to, like Suzanne said, to take them seriously, take us seriously. I would, in an ideal world, but this should be the ideal, is that with all of the diversity, and you know, thinking about George Floyd, you know, there's a lot of diversity investment that's been made into black people and looking at it, but has it really been targeted on black disabled people? Have they been missed out? The voices in our data says yes. Looking at funders, the funders, there is a huge disparity with black disabled people receiving funding or understanding how to complete funding applications. Within the report, racism, obviously, you know, as well as, you know, in learning environments, not being accommodated for in education, at work. Not everybody knows there's an access to work scheme that can help black people be able to navigate. And what's happening with this knowledge gap as well? Why do they not know? You know, is that something that the music industry can implement at the gate? Well, you know what? We will make accommodations, and we also have signed up to the access to work scene, so you can sign up to the access to work, and we'll make it easier for you so they can flourish and thrive in the industry. I want the music industry to hear the voices of the people that are entrepreneurial, but have also succeeded in becoming senior leaders in the industry, and to understand that they can do it. So you can employ more people who are black and disabled in the music industry, so we can see that change. So for me, and lastly, obviously, if there's any struggle with that and you need some help in making those choices and creating those programs and creating those pathways for black disabled people, come and speak to us. We're here. Attitude in Everything is Everything and Black Lives in Music. We're not going anywhere. So please partner with us, as we really want to partner with you to see an amazing, diverse, thriving music industry that everyone can enjoy.
And I think it's amazing that, as I say, the two organisations have come together and you're going to be working together. This is just the start. We said that at the beginning. But this report, this podcast, this is just the beginning of hopefully an amazing working relationship that is going to change the music industry for the better. I think you should both be really proud of this work that you've done. And before I let you go, I've got you both a little gift.
Oh my God.
So,
oh,
bless you. What's all this?
Oh,
Charisse, can I give you that?
Thank you, my dear.
Feel free to open it.
Open
so
it.
now, for the people listening, our report is available online. We'll give you all the information at the end. And it is a digital report, but I'm a little bit old school. okay? And I like something printed out. So I've printed you both out a copy of the report.
That's so nice to see.
Because I think it's a piece of work that you should both be very, very proud of. And also, can I just give a really quick shout out to Jacob Adams, who's head of campaigns at Attitude is Everything. Jacob, I've also got you a copy because Jacob has worked really, really hard on this report, and I really think that is something you guys should be so, so proud of. Thank you both for joining me on this episode. I've really loved it, and as I said at the start, you are both very inspirational to me personally, and I bet to a lot of people that are going to listen to this. We are going to make a change because you're both very determined, and that's all you need sometimes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of Unseen Unheard, the podcast. Thank you for listening to this episode of Unseen Unheard. If you would like more information on the report, please go to the Attitude is Everything's website or the Black Lives in Music's website, where you can read the whole report and find out more.